Hey guys, today I've got a really cool and very helpful sweep picking pattern that I want you to learn and start practicing on a regular basis. Now, we're going to go through 4 sweep arpeggios here, and we're going to be playing these in the key of D minor. Alright, so I'm going to break down each sweep picking pattern for you, and I'm also going to show you that cool thing that we do as we transition from one pattern to the next that kind of makes it sound a little bit smoother. And make sure you hang around till the end of the lesson. There's some very important points I want to make about using this technique, and I think it's going to help you. Let's start with the first sweep picking pattern. Now remember, this whole thing is in the key of D minor. However, I'll call out the chords for each pattern. This first arpeggio that we're playing, the first sweep picking pattern, can be played over a B flat. So if you've got like your buddy in the room playing rhythm behind you, just have them do a B flat power chord. The whammy doesn't have to be included, but hey, it can be included if you want. All right, so here's your pattern. I'm going to play it just kind of at normal speed. Then I'll slow it down, throw up the tabs. So one thing to point out here is the notes on the E string, I'm actually doing a hammer on pull off for that. So we're doing this. I am picking the first note that I play on the E string, but I'm doing a hammer on from there. Or a hammer on pull off, I should say. And what this kind of allows you to do, it allows you to quickly get into position to do the upstroke of the pattern, okay? So you're hammering on, pulling off. While you're doing that with your fretting hand, you can already position your pick to come back up on the pattern there. Now, one more thing you'll notice is we're ending on the same note that we start the pattern with, okay? But here's the little trickery part. We're coming up, right? We're coming back up with the upstroke, right? However, I hit that last note with a downstroke, and here's why. And I'll play this through so you can hear the transition here. This is where I start a little slide to transition from that pattern to the next pattern that we go to here. And this is kind of how I make the patterns glue together, so to speak, how to make them sound just a little bit more smooth instead of just playing this pattern then playing that pattern, if that makes sense. So let me just play this through real quick, going from the first little arpeggio here to the next, to the second one. So you see that cool little slide that we do transitions right into the next pattern, which I'll go over the notes for that pattern as well. Now, here's where you're going to actually be playing over the D minor chord here, right? So if your buddy's in the room right now and they're playing rhythm behind you, have them play a D power chord. Tell them to hit the whammy bar that time too. Now, here's this pattern. I'll play it at kind of normal speed. We're not playing these fast, by the way. That's not really the goal of this lesson, and I'll talk more about that at the end, so make sure to hang around for that. So that's pretty simple for the most part, but the big difference between pattern 1 and pattern 2 here is that we had our last 2 fingers, your pinky and your ring finger here, we had those starting that first pattern, right? So, and those notes are pretty close together here. Remember, we started, you saw the tabs, we started originally on 13, then went right to 12. So the difference with this pattern is those first 2 notes are spaced out a little bit more, actually a whole fret, or 2 frets up rather. So you're going to be going from 17 to 15, okay? Again, 2 frets up. So for that case, I'm using the pinky finger, but the second note I'm using my middle finger. So that's the big difference between these two patterns. Well, there's another difference. When you get to that last round of notes on the E string, it's kind of the same concept there, right? That note that you hit, that you start with, the one that we pick before we hammer on, there's a fret difference between those as well. So that's the difference, and just think of it, it's just a different hand or finger configuration that you're doing for these patterns, and it's good to practice both of those. I think the first pattern though, that finger configuration tends to be a little bit more difficult for some, and that's why we're going to work on that a little bit more in this third pattern here. Oh, and I almost forgot to show you the little transition that we do from pattern 2 to 3. A little bit different from the first pattern we did, going from 1 to 2. We did a giant slide on that one. We are going to do a little slide, so let me play this through and then I'll explain what we're doing here. So what I'm doing here is at the end of that pattern, and we're not playing this pattern all the way through. Remember, we're stopping on the note right before the note where we started, and that's the note. I'm just going to give it a little bitty slide. I'm not even really going anywhere with it. Doesn't really matter how far back up you slide. I slide just enough to help me start that next and third pattern, which the third pattern, get your buddy over there playing rhythm and have them play a C power chord. Whammy's optional on that one. So this pattern is exactly like the first pattern that we played. That's the beauty of this part. We're just going to play that pattern, that same configuration, how your fingers are going across the fretboard. We're just playing those notes on different frets, all right? And again, of course, the tabs will be up here. So I'm going to play it through and then I'll slow it down. So again, very simple, exact same flow as the first pattern we did. However, the only difference is we're not going all the way through, meaning we're not ending on that note that we started on. We actually end on the note right before that, and that leads us into the final sweep picking pattern of this little series here. Now, let me go ahead and start out with the transition from pattern 3 to pattern 4 here, and we're just kind of doing a random slide to go into this pattern because actually we're going to play this further up the neck here, all right? So this is actually tell your person playing rhythm over there to play a G power chord. Whammy, not optional. They must do the whammy. So let's go through the transition first. And this is real simple. So remember, we ended pattern number 3 on that one note there on the 14th fret of the D string, okay? All we're really doing at that point, we're just kind of sliding everything up to play this next pattern that we're going to learn. So let me go through the transition into that pattern, pattern number 4, and then I'll break pattern number 4 down. So again, that one note that we end pattern 3 on, I just slide, and that's using my third finger there. So as I'm sliding that note, my pinky finger is kind of already going to be in the position to play that next note to start that fourth and final pattern. Now this fourth pattern is slightly different from what we've played so far. Only the ending, actually the beginning of the pattern is exactly the same as the sweep picking pattern number 1 and number 3. This is the same pattern. Of course, I'll put the little tabs and notes up here, but it's the exact same finger configuration going through this again until we get to the end. So let's go through that. Okay, so very basic ending here, and there's a reason why I do it like this. But all we're doing is that note that we're going back up, that note that we hit on the G string. That's the note that, instead of following through with the rest of the pattern, the sweep arpeggio or sweep picking pattern, we're actually going to slide this up to the 4th fret on that same string. Then we're going to finish out with the 5th fret of the D string. And real quick, the reason why I end that particular little progression of sweep picking patterns like that is just to give it something a little different so that it's not so robotic sounding. And we're about to talk more about that in a second here. Now, I want to chat with you guys real quick about something that I feel like is really important regarding this specific technique, the sweep picking and sweep arpeggios. But first, I want to know if this lesson helped you. So please leave that in the comments. I want to know if this helps you, because that's the whole purpose of videos that I put out like this. I give you these patterns, whether it be a riff or a lead lick or sweep picking pattern or whatever. I want you guys to be able to take this and learn from it and establish practice patterns based on what I'm showing you. More importantly, to expand on them. So as you're playing these patterns that I shared with you today, yes, I want you to practice those, but expand on them. Start playing those patterns at different places throughout the fretboard and so forth. And that's the whole point of these lessons. So let me know if it helped you. And of course, if you have any questions, leave those in the comments as well. I'll say this is probably the one technique on guitar that I am the most least comfortable playing. I am not the master of sweep picking or sweep arpeggios, and I don't claim to be that. I'm decent at it at best, meaning sometimes I can pull them off really well, while other times I'm sitting there in the studio, I'm like, I just can't seem to nail this down. Now, there's a reason for that, though. The biggest reason is, yes, I practice this technique, but I don't practice it as much as I should. And I don't even know if should is a word there, because I don't necessarily aspire to be the type of guitar player that does nothing but sweep arpeggios for the entire song. There's a lot of that out there, and this is the point that I want to bring up to you. You have to decide, is that your ultimate goal, to just be able to sweep arpeggio up and down the neck to the point where you don't do anything else? If that is your goal, I'm certainly not judging you for that. But from a listener's perspective, and this is where us musicians, this is where we kind of have to stop and think about things a little bit deeper, right? From a listener's perspective, they probably don't care to hear, 30 sweep arpeggio patterns up and down the neck over and over and over and over and over. After a while, maybe like 20 seconds, they're like, hey, can you do something else? Like, okay, we know you can do whatever it is that you're doing. What else can you do? Because I don't hear anything else. If your music calls for that, if that's your primary goal, hey, go for it, You will need to practice. This technique comes easier to some than others. Now, me, myself, I am going to practice this style more because I want to get better at it. But again, I don't want to become one of those people that's all I do, because, man, there's a lot of guitar players out there doing that, and it just gets old. It's just not pleasant to listen to. It's cool to watch, right? It's cool to watch and cool to see it being done. It's like, oh, that's pretty cool. But then what do you do next? You might give it a like, but you're scrolling on to the next thing, right? Because it's just not captivating, you know. And that's just my opinion, guys. You guys may have a different opinion on that. I'm not saying you shouldn't sweep pick. Sweep. Say that weird sometimes. Anyway, I'm not saying you should not. This is getting weird with I'm not saying you shouldn't sweep pick at all. That's not what I'm saying, hence this lesson that I'm putting out there. But I just wanted to give you something something deeper to think about when it comes to sweep picking and when it comes to playing sweep arpeggios. I really just want to challenge you to don't let it consume your guitar playing, if that makes sense. Still do other things, still do some tapping, still do some slow melodic patterns. And as you can see, the pattern that we played, I didn't play it fast at all. I didn't try to play it fast at all. I don't think that the sweep picking pattern I played would sound very good fast. I've tried playing it faster and I was like, okay, well, it's great, but playing it at like not a slow but maybe at a medium speed here sounded a bit more melodic, and it was kind of telling that story. You know, it was like that really melodic, cool, like fantasy theme style story that it seemed to have behind the notes. I don't know if you guys caught that, but especially with the progression that we were playing that in, so that was pretty cool. But anyway, I just kind of wanted to throw that out there. I always like to share my thoughts with you guys on these types of things, and you know, this is one of those topics where I think it's really important. I think it's important to diversify yourself as a guitar player and never let yourself, even if it's a cool technique, because look, sweep arpeggios, sweep picking is cool, it's great, but you know, don't allow yourself to become locked in on something so much that that's all you do, and that you just forget about everything else that there is about playing guitar and about the notes and about the other techniques and methods that you could be throwing out there as well. So leave your comments on our little chat. I'd like to know your thoughts on, you know, this specific technique, and do you think people sweep pick too much? Do you see a lot of that when you're scrolling through social media or YouTube or whatever? Or do you think it's okay to be that? I'd love to know your thoughts. I'm not saying I'm right, and we can even disagree on things like this. That's okay. We can disagree and still be friends, you know? I appreciate all of you. On that note, guys, thank you. I do appreciate all of you. Thank you for supporting my channel. Remember, I do have links in the description of this YouTube video. There's a free practice guide. There's links to my music in my shop where you can buy my CDs merch. I have a PayPal donate button there as well. It says buy Jason a beer free. Those are just some awesome ways you can help support me. I get questions about that a lot of times, so I want to throw that out there. So guys, I do appreciate your support. Thank you. Until the next video, as always, keep it metal.